Right. So officially welcome to our Careers in Social Change, Social Entrepreneurship, and Corporate Responsibility panel. My name is Renee, and I am the Director of Community Engaged Learning. Pronouns are she, her, and hers, and I will be your moderator this evening. Tonight's panel is brought to you on behalf of the Professional and Career Development Services, as well as the Office of Community Engaged Learning. The pathways, which this model or this session is modeled after, is a framework that helps us understand various paths for getting involved in service, community, and social change activities. So tonight, we're fortunate to be joined by several amazing entrepreneurs and social change makers here in our community. So we have Zachary Couture from Lutheran Services of Iowa, who is the production supervisor for the refugee community and manager of Global Greens, which he'll explain, and you'll hear more about that. We have Rod Johnson, who's co-founder of Black Bold Coffee. Kuhn, co-founder of the Justice League of Food and a business partner in the Hall. And last but not least, Kelsi Ziemann, Drake alum and founder of KZA Cosmetics. So before we get started, just a couple of quick housekeeping tips. We clearly have been doing this now, virtual world, for quite a while, but we should be used to knowing that there's some distractions that might come with this. And so, of course, please try, in order to minimize those, mute your mics unless you're the one speaking. And we're going to ask participants if you could please turn off your video to help us with bandwidth, so that only our panelists will be on camera during our event. Please use the chat function to ask questions. You can also do the raise your hand, and one of my colleagues, either Crystal or Amanda, can help capture that or call on you to ask a question. As I mentioned, we're recording the panel so that you can watch it again later or share with your friends. So let's get started. It is universally understood that volunteerism is good and a needed part of social change. But often we forget that there are amazing career opportunities as well. So this panel tonight, as I mentioned, focuses on social entrepreneurship and corporate responsibility. So I'll ask each of our panelists to introduce themselves further. Tell us a bit about your background, your business or your venture, and what drew you to this career area. So let's start in reverse order from introductions. Kelsi, would you like to go first?
Absolutely. So first off, thank you everybody for joining. I'm really excited to let you know a little bit more about my business and my career path. So I actually never thought that I would be doing this as a career. When I graduated high school, I went to a job fair to work at the mall. I worked at a cosmetics counter for a long time. I was actually going to DMAC part-time, but I had no idea what I wanted to do, and I flunked out of college. So after working as a makeup artist for a while, I realized I really wanted to pursue that. I went to the Makeup Forever Academy and I studied more fashion and editorial makeup techniques. And then when I turned 25, I realized I really wanted to get a sound background to build that into a business. So I got my associate's degree from DMAC. I went to Drake and I got my degree in marketing and entrepreneurship. I graduated magna cum laude. And I think a big reason for that is I met teachers who really were great positive reinforcements for me. And that's a big reason why I started my business and why one of my passions is to help provide education for women. Because I think if you're introduced to those things, especially at a younger age, and you have those positive role models, then it can completely change your entire life. So I joined the John Papa John competitions. I ended up winning. I also participated in the Lawrence and Hatchery and ended up going through that program that really helped catapult me to do this full time. So I've been working for 7 years full time for myself. I started off as just providing makeup artists services for people for weddings and special events, and then found a need for products. And I wanted to create something that was vegan and cruelty-free and easy to shop for. And I donate 5% back to empowering women. So a lot of it goes to Young Women's Resource Center, Dress for Success, Dorothy's House. I also work with the Animal Rescue League and then Gigi's Playhouse. And down the road, I am working on providing a scholarship program as well as my business grows. But I think that kind of covers everything about how I got started and where I'm at now. I do have cosmetics that I started. So after having the services, I developed a lip stain and a lip gloss, and then I have a utility patent on a lipstick that isn't out yet.
Exciting for those of us who wear makeup on the call. Well, thank you, Kelsi. We look forward to learning more. How about Rod? We'll go with you next.
Awesome. Again, thank you for having me today. Really excited to learn about other businesses that are doing good in their communities, as well as share a little bit about our story here. So as mentioned, my name is Rod Johnson, co-founder and CMO of Black Bold Specialty Beverages / coffee. Most people know us for coffee, even though we sell tea as well. How my career path led me here is a little bit unorthodox, especially considering that I didn't even drink coffee prior to starting Black Bold. I was definitely not my ideal customer. And in fact, I started my professional career as an academic and healthcare fundraiser. So immediately after undergrad, I joined on with a firm that placed me essentially at different institutions, and I was responsible for managing their annual fundraising efforts. So that took me across America to work for organizations like Florida State University or St. Vincent Healthcare or University of the Pacific, where I spent the majority of my time here in the last 4 or 5 years, but essentially just felt unfulfilled by the career, despite doing good and providing resources for scholarships, technological upgrades, and other services by way of fundraising dollars. I felt that there was a huge void or an area essentially that was missing that starts at the beginning. There are demographics that are ill-resourced and don't necessarily have just the basic needs before they even can think about pursuing a career, or rather higher education. So that, along with my business partner having his own, recollection, or I don't want to say recollection, but just having his own moment of, what am I doing and how can I be a little bit more instrumental using the skills that I've developed over the years, led us to branch out beyond our corporate careers to start Black Bold. So we've been in business now for just over 3 years, or rather we launched our business about 3 years ago, and ultimately took our hobby and turned it into a means of supporting youth in need. We too give a portion of our proceeds back to organizations that support domestic youth. So rather than recreating the wheel ourselves, we figured that we will pour into people that are already doing the work. And it's been very gratifying knowing that we can, connect an everyday habit of drinking coffee and tea into a means of support to the people who need it the most. So I look forward to elaborating a little bit more about our venture. And again, appreciate the opportunity to chat with you all today.
Wonderful, thank you. And I don't know if this was on purpose, but I love the analogy of pour into other people, since you sell liquids. Or the items to make liquids. So thank you. Welcome. I'm glad to have you here. Next, we will have Zachary. If you would like to introduce yourself further.
Yes. Hello. My name is Zachary Couture. I'm the land and production supervisor for the Global Greens program. We work with people who come here as refugees and want to start gardens and farms. So it's not usual that I get to talk about myself because I'm probably the least important part of all of it. But like my own self, last semester in college, I did a program called Casa de la Solidaridad, which means House of Solidarity. And just getting galvanized in, for instance, like the difference between service and solidarity. And so, especially as like a white guy working cross-culturally, I have to be really aware of myself and where I'm coming from. And I saw down there like church groups that come down and try to teach people stuff that they had no idea about. And there's a quote that I'm going to share with you, that especially if you're looking at doing something socially minded, I'll just share that quote with you. It goes, it's by a woman named Lilla Watson. And she goes, if you've come here to help me, you're wasting your time. But if you've come because your liberation is bound up with mine, then let's work together. And I think pointing to also what these guys are saying too, that, you know, we had a group of people that just came to us and said, hey, how do we do this? And it's like, if something doesn't exist out there, then you just need to go and create it. So I think that's a big part of my own professional development as well. And so in terms of the program, I guess similarly, I didn't ever expect myself doing this. I just wanted to be helpful and do it sort of in the best way possible. But yeah, from that small group of people who initially came to us and said, we want to start gardens for our own self-sufficiency, you know, and gardens provide like mental health, physical health, as well as like improving our food system. And the more I learned about our food system and how broken it is, you know, like we have like 30 million acres of land in Iowa and we import 90% of our food. The more, I guess I got more sunk into just being like, hey, how do I like support people to get their own land, to grow their own food. And then that just leads into the next thing and the next thing, you know. So we had the community gardens and we still do. And then we started an education and business incubator program where we support people to start their own farm businesses. And then we started a farmers market where like this year, the farmers are selling their culturally appropriate vegetables to people, and we're helping. There's like a double on snappers of sales simply to low income people. And we have a CSA and some other things too. But yeah, I guess, you know, in terms of my own, it's one thing leads to another, and you know, you got to have passion and drive and not give up, you know, because I don't know, like the city like the city of Des Moines just kicked all the gardeners off of their land. And so now we're getting into more advocacy stuff. And, you know, I guess, you know, if you have a vision of what you want to do or something that you want to accomplish, you just got to go and create it.
Great. Thank you, Zachary. We look forward to continuing to hear more, both about Global Greens as well as your background. And hopefully for the audience, the participants that are on the call tonight, you're starting to see two different themes emerging. One, we have businesses who are using their business for social good outside of the business. And then we have a nonprofit that is using principles of business to create community wealth and independence for others as well. And so that theme is going to continue with our next panelist. And so our last and final panelist tonight is Nick Kuhn. So Nick, if you want to introduce yourself, give us a little bit of background on the Food Justice League and whatever else you'd like to share as an introduction.
Yeah, well, good afternoon, everybody. So my name is Nick Kuhn. I wear many hats. The hat I'm most proud of is I'm chairman of the Justice League of Food. My official title is CEH, which is Chief Executive Helper. And that was always a title I wanted in my corporate life, but corporate wouldn't give it to me. So I'm also the owner of the Hall in Valley Junction. And if you've ever been to the Hall, it's not a small place. We sell a lot of beer, we sell a lot of food. And we did something novel a few years ago, and we did it because we were told that it was impossible to do, to take a for-profit company and build it to support a nonprofit, which was built to support a government program. It sounds complicated. It's actually damn complicated, but that's exactly what we did. So on the nonprofit side, we have a mission of skills training and job placement services for at-risk and homeless youth. And we work with various shelters. We bring young people in. We pay them full-time for 2 years. We give them some mad skills. We teach them how to be adults. We also are a Meals on Wheels kitchen in Polk County. So that's right now we feed, I think, 2,300 people a month that can't afford to feed themselves. So that's what we do on the nonprofit side. Now, the novelty was we actually built a for-profit, and the for-profit's called the Hall, and we sell a lot of beer. And we not only sell a lot of beer, but we created a revenue platform for the nonprofit. Okay, the nonprofit also sells food to consumers into the Hall, and 100% of those proceeds are diverted back to the nonprofit. Said differently, 40% of the gross revenues of the Hall, which is very much for-profit, 40% of those revenues are actually being diverted to the nonprofit. And that's pretty unique because nobody deals with those kinds of percentages. And then lastly, all of it was built to support a government program called Hunger Free Polk County. It is about the most complicated thing I've ever done. I was told it was impossible, and I just had to get the right folks on the team to pull that off. And now, not only that, but we're expanding that whole model. And if you take a step back with nonprofits, financial sustainability is very important for nonprofits. And I am the worst when it comes to begging for money. I'm the worst when it comes to charity. However, we figured out a way for nonprofits to be financially successful and keep their nonprofit status and keep doing the good things we do. And that is the business model that was created a few years ago. And it's my understanding that it's pretty unique, not only here in the metro, but nationwide. And which we also have a lot of nonprofits starting to approach us, trying to pick our brains on how we actually pull it. So, and I'd love to elaborate on that more, because I think the greatest compliment I've been given so far is business schools will be studying this business model for decades, because we did something that, quite honestly, I was told is possible. So with that being said, we're just trying to do good things, and none of us set out. We didn't wake up. Well, we did wake up one day, but none of us set out in the world to go down this path. And it's just something that materialized through personal experiences with the homeless. And if you take a real step back and look at what we did, we saw a need in our community. We took a hard look at ourselves. What skills do we offer? What are we good at? And how can we apply that to helping? And we did it. And the neat thing is we're really good at selling food and beer, which a lot of folks are. And all we did was take that skill, that strong skill that we had, and apply it to help our community out. So yeah, that's it. I've got all kinds of stories to tell about how we got here. It's been an interesting journey, but we're glad to be here. We're glad to share whatever knowledge we have. And we're just happy for the opportunity to keep telling our story.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you being here as well. And definitely there is a theme, right? No one set out to say, yep, this is exactly what I'm going to do. And so I hope we can continue to explore that as well. And the resources and influences and mentors and that kind of thing along the way that might be helpful for our students to know about. So I have a whole host of questions, but I want to give people on the call the opportunity to ask questions first. So is there anyone who would like to ask a question to get us started? You can either put it in the chat box or simply unmute, raise your hand, unmute yourself, and you can ask directly. And please don't be shy. Oh, Xavier, you're up.
Hi, my name's Xavier Golden, and I'm from Minneapolis, suburb of Minneapolis, but I go to Drake University, and I'm a senior who is going to be graduating in December. And so my question is, what business strategies do you employ to keep your business running even through a global pandemic? Sure.
Well, great question. And kudos to you. Congratulations. Good luck on your journey once you step out into the real world, as people say. But fortunate for us, we started off as a digitally native brand. Our business model includes us not having coffee shops, whereas we serve as the manufacturers of the product that's served in different entities, whether it be co-working spaces, hospitals, coffee shops, you name it. I can't say that we had the foresight, but fortunate for us, it has benefited us by being location agnostic. Whereas many of our competitors, i.e. coffee shops, were trying to figure out e-commerce. We initially started our business that way. And when everything shut down, people were looking to still get their daily fix, where you couldn't go to your local coffee shop. The idea of becoming a home barista skyrocketed, and it lent itself for people to find us essentially, and the fact that we have that social impact piece embedded at the core of what we do, it gave us a little bit of an edge. So just our initial go-to-market strategy of being digitally native definitely benefited us as we were all experiencing this global pandemic, as you referenced.
Would anyone else like to take a stab at the question?
Yeah, I'll throw it out there. So our business model is pretty simple. We're surrounding a nonprofit with business sales. Okay, that's what we do. We take our core business, the nonprofit, which we look at as the mothership, and we surround them with business. Now, in the wake of a pandemic, that's the interesting part, because all of our businesses were food and beverage related. They all got shut down. And I'll be honest, for about 3 weeks there, we were wandering around aimlessly in the wilderness of the pandemic, trying to figure out what we're going to do. And to be honest, we leaned in even harder and deeper into our nonprofit work, because that's all we had. And somehow we not only survived the pandemic, but we literally thrived. We grew as an organization through the pandemic. And when I look back, and I think it's just because we didn't have a choice. We had to, everything else got killed, right? Food and beverage was dead for 11 weeks in this state. And so we literally just relied on faith that if we continue to do good things will happen these 9 times. And so that's not much of a model to follow in terms of business, but it is surely a model to follow in terms of having no choice, and no choice, especially given the nature of our businesses. So we relied on faith. We relied on the simple fact that literally 9 out of 10 times, if you focus on the right thing and you try to do the right thing, good things will happen. And that's how we got through the pandemic. Now, having learned from that, we really dug into building businesses around profit after we survived. And that has really been the key to our success.
Great, thank you. So we have another question that's come in, and Kelsi and Zachary, if you want to answer the first one, feel free to do that. But I want to get this question in there to anyone who feels called to answer it. If you could have started with the intention of beginning a social change venture, or incorporating the social responsibility side of your business versus just kind of migrating into it, what might have you done differently?
I can take that one. So I guess for me, I started doing makeup honestly by accident, but the social change thing kind of came after I got my education at Drake. And that actually was like the first thing I wanted to focus on. Before I even had products made, before I even had anything to sell, I said I wanted to create a business that gives back. And I remember one of my professors said, you know, that's great, but you have to be able to have an income before you focus on that. So I think that's an important thing to note, is that if you don't have anything, you're not selling anything, it's hard to initially give back. I think you need to be creative in the ways that you do it. So like I would donate time or, you know, services or products that I could to people. But I will say one mistake I made is being like overzealous in how much I could give initially. So I spent a lot of time and money setting up a nonprofit called Lipstick with a Voice to provide scholarships for women in the state of Iowa before I even had, you know, money to throw into it. So I think there's a lot to be said for focusing on just starting at whatever capacity that you can, and understanding that whatever you can give, big or small at the beginning, will be appreciated. And the more that you're able to build your profits in your business, the more you're able to give as you grow. So I think that you can start with having a social mission at the heart of your business.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
Yeah,
go
I want
ahead.
to dovetail on that. You know, go ahead, Zachary.
We'll
No,
go.
if you want to dovetail, go.
We'll go Rod and then Zachary.
Sure. I was just going to say, yeah, I highly recommend, you know, incorporating that idea in your business venture as early as possible. It's much easier to map out your economics if you know that you want to give something to a particular cause, a particular community, because making that shift, especially if you are a for-profit business, might be a little bit more difficult down the line. You know, we landed on giving a percentage of our proceeds as opposed to a one-to-one model like Tom's, for example, because we felt as though the bigger our business grows, the bigger the impact that we can have. So I just want to throw in the fact that if you are looking to incorporate some level of give back, make sure to include that at the inception so that you can build the economics around that idea.
So that's a good segue, Rod, actually, into what I was going to say, is that our program, I mean, we just started extremely grassroots, you know, with a couple people that said they wanted a garden. And so we just like going around calling people, you know, meeting with neighborhood associations, cold call. I mean, we've been told no hundreds of times more than we've been told yes, you know, and you got to get back up. And that's a whole other thing. But doing your advice up front, now that we've learned things and learning from our mistakes, you know, like we've had the cops called on gardens because they see someone gardening where there wasn't a garden before. Like now we have like policies and things as we've moved through in terms of best practices. So if you're thinking about starting something, to add to what Rod says, do your research, I think. And if you have a clear vision and as much as you can map out before you start, I think is helpful. And the more you can provide, you know, your stakeholders, whether that be, you know, financial, social, customers, the more you can provide those stakeholders with some sort of vision from the beginning, and to do your homework on best practices and things like that, I think the more successful you'll be. And then to add to, is it Kelsi? To add to her point that, you know, if you are going to be taking risks, like you do have to think about like, what is your backbone? Like, what are you going to rely on? If, you know, like you have to be able to have enough of something there that you're relying on to be able to take risks. Cause you can't just, you know, go and be homeless, trying to be a bleeding heart, you know. And I see that a lot with like organic farmers who just want to do like, I want to change the ecology and I want to grow a farm. It's like, if they don't also think about how they're going to be making enough money to support themselves, you know, you can't just go planting prairies and making money, right? So there are some realities that you have to think about too. So that's my small piece.
Yeah, I'll just throw on, it's a great question, and all the answers are really building on previous answers. But I never wanted to run a nonprofit. I never wanted to start one, but I had to. I had to for the purposes of funding. But in my journey to create a nonprofit, the best advice I was ever given, best advice, and this, I'll share this advice with anybody, but the best advice, if you're going to help people, you must do it well. If you're going to help, do it well. And the only way to do things well in this world today is with money. And then I thought about that. Okay, I can either go ask for it, or I can go make it. And so a business-centric approach to the nonprofit is something that I will always be a champion of, because we all want to make the world a better place. We all want to do well, but it takes money to do it, and we must have a way to generate that revenue, however we do it. And so do things well, and it takes money, and as long as you latch onto that, I think that's the advice I can offer.
At the same time, I would say you also have to be careful to not, like, I think if you do want to have social change and impact, you got to be careful not to get too wrapped up into like status quo also. Because it's so easy, you say, I'll do that someday, right? And I think, like, you're looking at several people here who's saying, you know what, I'm not gonna. So while you do your research and you have a plan and you're smart, like, there's also, like, you got to seize the day. And if you think you're going to do something in the future, like, there's no tomorrow, right? Like, the work you get done today. So.
Great answers. Thank you. And underpinning theme, I think, is resources. And as I know that there's lots of students on the call, I'm going to put a link over here in the chat to our Lorenzen hatchery, which Kelsi had mentioned earlier. We have resources during the summer right here at Drake, or if you participate in this hatchery, you actually get paid. And then mentorship and support on starting your business and developing that. The CBPA/centers page, if you go to this link on the left-hand side, there's additional centers and resources available right here through Drake as well. So just want to draw your attention to that. Emily, you have your hand up, and then I know we have another question in the chat box too. But Emily, if you want to ask your question.
Yeah, thank you. First of all, I just want to say thank you to all of the panelists. All of your stories are super inspiring, because I would love to start a business with a force for good. And so I guess right now I'm stuck at a point where I'm kind of all by myself with my idea. And I know that I can't do it all by myself, and I would love to have a team with me. So if some of you could walk through how you found your team and what kind of people and how many, just anything that you think is super important in starting a team to help you.
I can jump in.
Yeah,
You want to go, Nick? Yeah,
No,
I was going to say, when Pernell and I, my business partner and friend of 20 years, started Black and Bold, it was just us. Pernell was roasting beans in his garage and getting the fire department called on him, because who has that much smoke coming out of a garage? That's not normal. And at the time, I lived in California, and I took care of everything behind the scenes, like building our e-com site and handling all things digital. And that was it for the first year and a half, 2 years. And it was very intentional, because bringing someone on board to, embark on this journey with you will be one of the most important decisions that you'll make. You want to make sure that your team members are as passionate, if not more passionate, about the industry or about the cause, or just about, supporting what you're doing. And we're very diligent and intentional about who our employees will be. So, just making sure that they ultimately could serve as extensions of us, and we felt good about working with them. And should, we not be in a position to carry on our mission, we would feel good about leaving it in their hands in any capacity. So I think the hesitation is natural. Because people who are entrepreneurs, at least in my estimation, they are self-starters and people who might be a little overbearing or control freak, some might say, but it would behoove you to delegate, and with that delegation, it should be with people that you trust and feel good about. So take your time, I guess, ultimately is my advice. And yeah, I think that ultimately it will work itself out. So we started off with 2 people, and then we built a team of just under 20. And every single person that works with us, whether they work in our warehouse or work remotely and helping out with marketing or otherwise, are people that share in this idea of supporting youth or really care about coffee or some hybrid of the two. So, just do your due diligence and vetting out people who you feel, again, are going to be extensions of why you started your business in the first place.
That's we've got a similar story. So everybody needs to remember we had no intention of forming a nonprofit, like zero. But we were approached by Polk County, which is the local metro county here, and they just started noticing the good works that we were doing. We were volunteering, we were feeding people, we were using food trucks to feed to help those in need, and that started in 2015, and then 2 years later, that's when somebody noticed what we were doing. And then when people start noticing what you're doing, it's amazing how fast it all happens after that. So whenever I do give speeches about the journey that we've been on, it's just really one slide. It's a slide with breadcrumbs on a road. And once people start noticing what you're doing, it really becomes an exercise on your part to recognize those breadcrumbs and pick them up and start connecting the dots. And breadcrumbs are in our world are generally people. Okay, so to think of people just start coming out of the woodwork, and the better you are at recognizing people who can be very helpful, the faster you will execute on that, in many cases in real time, in seconds. The other thing I think that helped us out is our message was really simple, and people could wrap their brains around it in a split second. In the business world, we used to call it the elevator speech. Okay, if you've got like a 3-minute elevator speech, you're doing well. If you have a 10-second elevator speech, you're doing great. And I think that was something that I learned: just keep it short, keep it sweet. No matter what you're doing, just keep it simple. Don't make it complicated. People need to process this in mere seconds, and then they just start wanting to come work. On the for-profit side, we run a bar. Literally, it's a bar. We sell beer, we sell food, but our employees come to work for us because of what we do on the nonprofit side. So, so the best advice I have is, good works. And then when people start noticing, recognize it quickly and act on it, because there's an opportunity every minute of the day in the line of work that we're in, and most of them pass us by, but if you can spot them, you'd be amazed at what happens. So that's it. It's breadcrumbs. Pick them up. Don't eat them. Just pick them up. Just do something creative with it.
Thank you, Nick. Kelsi, anything from your perspective, having started your venture basically as a student?
Yeah. So I would say my path is definitely a little bit different because I started on my own, and I technically am the only full-time employee in my business. I work completely with independent contractors. So I have 5 independent contractors that provide makeup services, and then I have independent contractors for other things. So I have, accountant, a bookkeeper, a lawyer, a graphic design person. And those are things that when I started off, I tried to do all of that on my own. And I realized I can't, nor am I good at doing all of that on my own. So you do have to be very aware of what your strengths are and what your time is best used doing. And for me, I'm working to get to a point where I can have a part-time employee who might take over, you know, processing orders or doing things like that, answering emails. But there are resources if you are small and you're not to the point where you want to have an employee yet, you can definitely find independent contractors to do a lot of those things to free up your time.
Fantastic. I want to get to this other question in the chat box. So anyone, once again, anyone that this speaks to, please feel free to answer. How do you measure your success?
I can do this. I mean, that's always something we really struggle because we're primarily grant funded. And so the grants say, you know, you help X number of farmers or gardeners that have, you know, X number of dollars of sales and X square foot of gardens with X pounds of produce. But that's not like how we define our success. That's how our grantors define success, you know, and like for us, I think we have other ways of talking with people to listen to their stories and like just the things actually that you can't measure, I think are actually more valuable a lot of times. Unfortunately, like for us, we have to get money to do that, and that world really appreciates numbers and dollars and cents. But like the way that we like to measure success is the stories of the people, really, you know, and what they find value in. And I mean, that's what keeps us going, I guess.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll jump in. Success is evergreen. You know, there are different versions of success depending on the stage of the business. Like the first way that we measure success was, all right, when can we stop burning beans and actually make a batch of coffee that is drinkable, right? And that took a while. Then it was, all right, how can we you know, take this operation out of the garage? Now it's, you know, bringing on a first employee. Then, you know, it just continues to grow as the business grows, or rather it's defined rather depending on the needs of the business at any given moment. So I think that's kind of embedded in entrepreneurship, that there isn't one measuring stick. It's really dependent on what your focus is at the moment, which will change depending on which direction you want to take the business. Success for us nowadays is making sure we take care of the families of our employees. We take that responsibility very seriously. You know, it's not something that we thought we would probably. I wouldn't say it's not something that I knew would be as big of a priority for us, is making sure that we take care of the people that work for us. But that is my main focus, is how can we sustain and stabilize our business in such a way that those that work with us, you know, feel good, as, you know, as it pertains to, you know, job security and being able to take care of their families. So, you know, in summation, success is going to be defined based on what your target is at any given moment of your journey.
Yep. Go ahead, Kelsi.
Yeah, so I'd say to speak on that as well, for me, it's, you know, when somebody uses a product, they like it, they're happy, you know, they're happy with the services. And then it's also obviously, I'm profitable, and I'm more profitable than I was last year. So I watch those things. But I think one important thing to note is that entrepreneurship it's a very sexy field. You know, you get into it, you tell somebody you're an entrepreneur, they're like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. You must be like bathing in money. That's not how it goes. And I think it's important to note that like your measure of a success is always changing. So I might figure something out and say, wow, I did a really great job at this. Well, now what's next? So, you kind of have to be prepared for that. I think it's actually called imposter syndrome. Like your people might recognize you or notice you, but in your head, you're like, okay, well, I still have all these things I want to do. And it's not that you're doing a bad job. It's just that you have so much that you want to do. And entrepreneurs are just always wanting to, solve problems and create new things. And so I guess for me, it's once I create something and see people are happy with it, but then once that happens, I want something else. So be prepared for that change.
Real quick. I'll chime in quickly. Go ahead. So the way I'd answer the question, it depends on who's asking. If it's for the purposes of grants, I will get all numerical and formulaic measures of success, which the easy button for us is the number of people we feed every month. That's easy. And I get it, those who are offering grants, they need hard numbers to fall back on to help make decisions. The real answer started off as one person. If we help one person get off the street and help them out so they can go out and make the world a better place, that was our only goal. And I was perfectly fine if that was the only thing I accomplished in this world. And then when we accomplished that, now it's 2 people, and that's 3 people, and that's 4. And then now the hope and the goal is that it just goes exponential. Regardless of what we do, it's all related to paying it forward. And then when others recognize that they've been helped, our hope is that they pay it forward and then things go exponential. And so on some grants, they want something a little squishier like that, which is a real answer. I can't measure it, but all I know is that if somebody does the same thing that we did because of what we did, that's an intangible that we'll never be able to measure.
So I was gonna piggyback on Kelsi, that and I guess what people are saying, there's like small steps, and we encourage the farmers in our program to sort of define what success means to them. Like, do I want a 2 or a 4 acre farm? Like, how much money do I need to sustain my family, right? And I don't think everything can happen all at once either. And so you do need to find ways to sort of find meaning in each little step, right? Like, you're like, I'm not there yet. And I don't know if that ever goes away, right? Because like, I think when we started the first garden, we're like, woohoo! And then we're like, oh my God, like, now what? So, and you don't want to go through always thinking what's next either, because then you can't find any contentment in what little successes and small moments and things like that might be along the way. So, I mean, that's just a general piece of advice for your own personal contentment, that if you're always chasing success, there might be some things that you miss out on to be thankful for and to be positive for that might be right in front of you that you don't notice.
Thank you all. Well, I'm noticing the time, and I want to make sure that we close on your thoughts on what current students can be doing now, right? How do they engage? And so we've mentioned Lawrence Hatchery as a summer opportunity. If someone from the business school could put a link into information about entrepreneurship courses, I'd greatly appreciate that. But students are registering right now for courses. There's Entrepreneurship 101, which would be really great for anyone wanting to dip a toe. But what else? What would you recommend to a student who, is something is sparked inside them, and what should they be exploring, or resources that you found helpful in your journey that can help them get started now?
Sure. I'll go ahead and jump in. I would say just start, right? Like get out of your own way and just start wherever you are. Neither Pernell or I had any formal experience in the coffee industry. It's not like we were baristas or come from a coffee growing region. We just spent a lot of time in coffee shops, given our respective corporate careers. And we used YouTube a lot. So we're graduates of YouTube University. We asked a lot of questions. We just became, mentees of the industry, from a distance with the resources that we had. And to Kelsi's point, imposter syndrome is real. It doesn't go away regardless of how much success you amass. It's, you know, that nagging little voice that serves as a dissenting opinion, but you have to ignore that, because that will get in the way of you ultimately fulfilling your dream. And so, as like, simple as it sounds, I would say just start and continue to forge yourself down that path, because otherwise that opportunity and the moment might pass you by, right? I mean, that's you know, part of being good, part of being successful is being lucky, and I think being lucky is very much so dependent on timing as well. And you know, you wouldn't want to be looking back, you know, 10 years, 20 years, however many years down the line, and say, man, if I just would have started, then who knows where I would be on this venture. So just start and be patient with yourself. Give yourself a little bit of grace as you are on this journey, because you're doing something and learning new skills that you didn't have beforehand. So that's, you know, that has worked well for us, and we still tap into that philosophy as we continue to grow our business.
Thank you. Kelsi, any tips or suggestions for what students could be doing?
Yes, so there were a few things for me that I think helped. I wasn't afraid to ask people for help. So I knew what I was asking, like, hey, I'm from Iowa, I want to start a cosmetics line. I would say 98% of the people that I talked to were like, that's too competitive. You can't do that. You know, like, think of something more realistic. But I reached out to the resources that I could and the resources that I had. And I got involved in what I could locally. And I found out, you know, there are cosmetic manufacturers in Iowa that, you know, I worked with Kimmin. They let me come in and to their R&D lab and shadow, and they were great resources for me. So don't be afraid to reach out, ask for what you need, and then absolutely start in whatever capacity that you can. You'll learn as you go. And I think the best advice I ever got from a professor was, you'll always need more money. I know that that's boring advice, but that's kind of like, that's a bottleneck, I think, in any business. And when you start off, you're naive. And I thought doing services, I could use all that money to start a cosmetics line, and I was wrong. So I'm glad that I was able to find resources like the Lawrence and Hatchery, like, you know, the John Papa John competitions, the DMAC competitions, and I was able to secure, you know, over $20,000 in free money to start my business, just in pitch competitions, and get free advice from experts.
Wonderful. And on that note, Zachary, I look to you for some comments, because her comment about always needing money, I mean, you shared that with us too, right? Being grant dependent, which is a little bit different than the other business models on the call, but other advice or suggestions for current students?
I think Kelsi and Rod are right on when they say, you know, just jump in. You know, you got to be willing to be patient with yourself, live with mistakes, live with being told no. You know, so you got to have enough confidence to get back up every time that you're, you know, it's not that you're necessarily on the wrong track. It's just, you know, some people are willing to help, but there is also a lot of competition out there. So you got to be willing to just go for it, you know. And to Rod's point, someone said recently, it doesn't capture the full thing of what luck is, I think, because there is serendipity and things like that as well. That luck equals opportunity plus readiness, right? So you got to, if something comes along, you know, you got to be ready for that opportunity. So I don't know, I mean, that looks different, I think, in every different place, but I think there's some truth in that.
Great, thank you.
And
Nick.
tell your story, 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 and then tell your story again. So.
Yeah, thank you. Reminds me of a quote too, like, it doesn't matter how many times you get knocked down, it's the number of times you get back up. And you don't have success in entrepreneurship without failure. I mean, when they come together. So Nick, last parting words for students, like what should they, you get the last word here. how can they get engaged now? What's been helpful along your journey that you could pass on as advice?
Well, I mean, it's really, I listen to these answers. We've all had the same journey, very different forms or fashions. What spun me around, and this was to a point that Rod made earlier, what spun me around was I learned of a statistic about the average lifespan of CEOs of major corporations in the United States post, and it is 18 months. Okay, so to Rod's point, if you think you're going to wait until retirement to do good things, you might not have that much time after that. Okay. And that was one of the things that spun me around. Could I have done, I mean, I left my career at the age of 46 to do something different. Could I have done it 20 years ago? Absolutely not. I didn't have the business skills behind me that I picked up. So the best advice is if you want to get into anything that, just helping, then just help. But let's not be naive and think that we can start from scratch and then build this massive nonprofit and do wonderful things. I mean, it takes time. We learn over the years to help. Some of us, we got to get hit by a 2x4 like I did to make that decision. Okay. But we also need experience behind us, because it doesn't matter if it's a nonprofit or for-profit, we're still selling, right? We're selling something, whether it be a story or coffee or food or beer, doesn't matter. Gardens, trying to recruit others to look at the world the way we do and to join the mission. So it's a combination of experience, passion, luck. Now, there's an old saying, successful people tend to be luckier, which we make our own luck. This is what that means. So it's a nebulous answer that I'm throwing out there, but it's a complicated yet simple, beautifully simple thing that we're all doing. If that helps. So to sum it up, go out and do something and figure out whatever you got, whatever your biggest skill is. And I don't care what you're an expert at, there's some way to help out in this world with this. And then it'll start falling into place over the course of time.
Well, while you are finishing your comment, I am putting in the chat right now links to the websites for each of our speakers. Please, those who are on the call, help me, whether it's showing some snaps or using the reaction button, but thank our panelists tonight. This has been fantastic, I can say, just from my perspective. So I thank you all for your time and your sharing of your wisdom. A couple of things just to wrap us up here. As we mentioned, the pathways for civic and social change at the beginning. If you are looking to explore where someone, I can't remember who, but talked about aligning your passion and your skill sets with the needs of the world, essentially. This tool helps you kind of take an internal look at where that interest might be. And so I invite you to contact Amanda Martin, where you can go to the Drake link in the chat box, take the survey, or then set up a one-to-one meeting with one of our peers, community engagement peers, who can then help talk you through the resources and get you connected. So that's another resource available to you in a next step. We do have one more panel coming up yet this fall. Our next topic will be specifically on philanthropy on November 30th. And so check that out on Handshake and register there to receive the link. And that brings us to time. So thank you very much for joining us, and please go check out their businesses, buy some lipstick, some coffee, have a catered meal, or go, if you're old enough, go for a beer, maybe tonight down at the hall. So, and then this summer, make sure to stop by the farmer's market and pick up some greens. So thank you all for your time, and we look forward to supporting you and your businesses moving forward.